hearing from two of our current students going through the program. Now I'm going to call upon Francesca and Lane, who are recent graduates of the program, and they can speak to their experience. So Francesca, did you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hello, my name's Francesca, and my pronouns are she and her, Francesca Gold. I'm up in Ojai, California, which is north of LA, about an hour and a half or so, depending on traffic, 90 miles. I graduated in May with Lane, yeah. I did the low residency track, so it took me, I think it was ended up being almost 3 years. And then if you do it, in person full time, it's 2, which is so quick. 3 was so quick. Now that I'm done with it. Let's see, I have the little email up here. So what led me to the program? Without going into my whole life history, my first intro to yoga, if you will, was self-inquiry. It was through Krishnamurti, which is why I came to Ojai, moved here 10 years ago. That was just part of my upbringing and childhood. And then my mom's a yoga teacher as well. And it was just kind of like part of my life. And I have just an insatiable appetite for wanting to know more about this type of thing, about yoga, spirituality, myself, the world, relationship, all that. I actually started in the yoga therapy program, so not a master's degree, but the certificate yoga therapy program, shortly after I got sober, 7.5 years in recovery. And I just kind of paired that with education and bettering myself and, giving myself something positive to do. And I was in my mid-20s at the time. So it actually took me 5 years to do that certificate program. And the plan the whole time, it just took me a while to get to it, was to do the master's degree, which I did and I graduated from. So I did both of the tracks, but completely separately. And that's my path. I know that there's, options to interweave them and, all that. And then the next, do you want me to keep going on the questions, Diana? What I've been up to?
Sure. Yes, please.
Okay. So what I've been up to, so I'm going to just say I was a crazy person, and I opened up a studio when I was writing my thesis. So that was just a decision or a not, I don't know. It's just the timing of the way things worked out. So if you go to here, I'll just type it in the comments, our website, and you can browse, and I'm very proud of it.
If you want it, why don't you go ahead and screen share and show people the studio?
Oh, okay. I'm not in here right now, but I can show. Do you want me to show the website?
Yeah.
Okay. So I opened a studio. It's a community hall as well. There we go. Okay. So it's called Breathe Ojai, and we are sliding scale pricing, accessible. I'm a certified yoga therapist with the International Association of Yoga Therapists. So I also do my yoga therapy in there. We're trauma informed. All my teachers have gone through trauma informed training. All these phrases and words are buzzwords right now, but we really mean it. We try to be down to earth and be really inclusive and accessible and just really open. So here's a little look at our schedule. Whatever, you can go on there and look for yourself. Some days are fuller than others. We have recovery meetings there. We have learn and meditate series, yoga nidra, therapeutic yoga, all that. So sliding scale, we do, it's 120 to 160 for a membership, and it's no gatekeeping. We just have people pay what they're able to, and they can switch at any time if they need to. 10 pack, same thing. It's sliding scale. They pick what they're able to. And then same thing with drop-in. It's $20 to $28, which is pretty good for Southern California. What else? Here, there's some more photos on the class description. Yeah, so there's not like a real big photo of the studio, but it's like 800 square feet or so, 700, 800 square feet, I forget right now. And we're starting a 200-hour training in there. Self-inquiry groups there. We have a book club. You know, I'm just trying to bring in, and we are bringing in lots of different voices. So I'm wanting to be a conduit to just the yoga community. Okay, there's a pretty good photo of the space. So it's like 3 times as big as that, but you get the idea. Yeah, you can look on your own. I'm not gonna like read all this. There's all of our teachers. Here, I'll go more slowly. So there's me, Lauren, Zainab, Durga, Giri, who also did the graduate program here. There's my mom, Chelsea, Lisa, Sarah, Julia, Whitney, Hope, Rafaela. We have a couple more who I'm bringing on as well. Yeah. Am I missing anything about that?
No, it's great.
Yeah. Okay. And then, yeah, like I said, we're launching it's a teacher training, but I'm also giving the option, like if someone, that's my dog, if someone just wants to do it and not, you know, get a certificate for teaching, if they just want to do an immersion. Okay, so the other questions are my unique experience in the program. It was a challenging program. I think that needs to be said first and foremost. It's a graduate program, and LMU is a prestigious university, and there is a lot of reading, there is a lot of writing, there is a lot of thinking. I remember the first semester I took 3 classes, and I was eating so much because you're using so much energy, so much brain power, and just like sitting there focusing takes so much more energy than you would realize. So, I mean, it's a big commitment, even low residency. So that was you know, just kind of like a one level of experience. I think like another aspect to that would be just, I'm a very disciplined person, and just the opportunity to continue to deepen my studies with yoga. I've also done a 500-hour and a 200-hour and a 1,000-hour yoga therapy program. So I just enjoy being disciplined and being challenged. And there's something else. Oh, I also just like to say, I've done a couple of these things, and I've talked to a couple of like prospective students. I also just like to mention, like, just to be real, like there were definitely at least 2 separate times in the beginning of the program, the first year, where I was gonna quit. Like I was just overwhelmed with it. It was the work, and it was, what am I doing? It was the worry. It was my, you know, it was the brain, you know, like, well, what am I gonna do? What am I spending all this money for? What am I spending all this time and energy for? And that's very normal, and that's part of the process. And when I was thinking those things, I didn't have it in the very, very forefront of my mind that I would open this studio. It's kind of always been in there, but it's just hard to see the end when you're at the beginning or even in the middle of it sometimes. And I talked to almost every professor there and the former program administrator as well. And they would, you know, listen to me, and no one ever tried to, you know, coerce me to stay or anything like that. But I bring that up to just say, like, it's all normal. Whatever you're thinking is normal, and it's been thought before. And like, don't worry if, you know, whatever your situation is. I mean, worry if you want, but whatever. Okay. And then the last question is, what's my most memorable or valuable lesson? Well, and this kind of ties in, I'll just try to be brief here so I don't talk longer than my allotted time. This ties into what you were asking, Ayan, in the beginning about sharing a word. And my word is faith. Maybe you've heard it before, like faith over fear, and you have a choice. And that's one thing I've learned in my, in my recovery and just in my yoga studies and just in life and being here on this planet, is we always have a choice, and to keep having faith that it won't always work out the way you want, but it will work out however it works out. And if we have faith or some sort of positive orientation or perspective, instead of giving in to fear and worry and just, all the cliches that you'll inevitably study if you join the program or you've studied them already, that can dampen our light. So, and then I also wanted to welcome the sisters here. Before I did this graduate program, my undergraduate was with the Sisters of Mercy over in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And there were like over 50 nuns that lived on campus with us in downtown Pittsburgh and Oakland. And I just feel like a wonderful kinship and, memories of having done that experience. And it's wonderful being at Loyola Marymount University, because it's a Jesuit university, and there's such there seems to be, in my experience, a welcoming nature and inclusive nature to everybody and all faiths. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Lane, it's your turn. Please share your experience being here.
Yeah, that was beautiful, Francesca. What led you to the yoga studies graduate yoga studies program? What led me, I was working in communications, so I was writing content for an engineering firm. And then the pandemic hit and I decided it was a good time to go back to school, and I was torn between a creative writing program and the MA in yoga studies program, which may seem wildly different, but like Francesca said, there is a lot of reading and there's writing in there as well. And it's, I wouldn't say an excessive amount. I mean, it's what I expected going into it. And it was all content, the way that I saw it, it was like, if you study yourself or you study things that are going to be inspiring or help you connect to something, then you can inform your life in all different kinds of ways. So I've taken post-grad, leading into the question of post-grad, I've gone back into communications, but I've taken a job writing for a nonprofit advocacy group here in Sacramento at the capital city. And I feel like it's yoga in action, because we're just trying to get good things done for the children of California. Describe your unique experience in the program. I did the philosophy track, so I studied Sanskrit and did not have a lot of experience in the yoga therapy side, but in the philosophy track, it was really a lot of good. I had a lot of fun transliterating, got to learn Sanskrit. It was daunting at first, but we had great teachers that take their time getting you through it. How did your experience in the program lead you to where you are today? I wasn't sure that I was going to go back into comms after the MA. I thought maybe I would go teach yoga or maybe continue on to a PhD and do teaching. I know a lot of students have done that track too. And so I'm here for now. I think it's led me here because I just felt like I wanted to get some things done. Like I wanted to jump back into the world and apply a social justice lens. What's the most memorable or valuable lesson you learned about yoga during your matriculation through the program? I think for me, learning that showing up and having a lot of questions and leaving with more questions is actually a good thing, because that was constantly our classes. We would come in, we'd have all kinds of questions, and then the more you know, the less you know, kind of. So it's a good experience.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I see that Jamie has joined us. If Jamie might want to identify and say hello. And quite often when we turn our screen off, it's because we're on the other side of the room and we're listening, but it's going to take a little bit of time to get back. And as we're waiting, as soon as we see her microphone disappear, or the red part disappear, what I'd like to do, we'll let Jamie become part of the conversation. But I'm wondering if we could hear a little bit about the academic background, sort of the major, where you went to school. And Melody, it seems that you would be that you're in some way already part of the LMU community. If you could explain that. And I have to say, I love your pumpkins. Okay, you're muted.
Oh, yeah, I graduated from Fresno State and UC Davis years ago. I did 2 degrees. My last one, I graduated in May for ethnic studies. And just, I'm an old forever learner. So I wanted to go back and learn more. Because I'm a single mom of 3, what LMU offered me work-wise just really spoke to me for my daughters. So I am now in mechanical and electrical engineering department, and I'm working here and I love it. But I definitely, there's certain educational things that I did want to accomplish, and that master's is one of them. And like I said before, there's really nothing I have any interest in learning any more about but yoga. So this is why this is calling my name 100%. But yes, I am at LMU now, and I just love the campus.
Wonderful. Ayana just gave a talk up at Fresno State, and I was there
And
a few
Jackie.
weeks ago.
And
Great
Jackie.
campus. And Jackie was up there too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 2 of us at a conference.
Yeah, explain what you 2 did. And you 3, there was someone else too.
Yes, another one of our students, our classmates, Christine. We attended, and I'll grab the flyer. It was called The Highway to Healing, Understanding the Ocean of Oneness. And the 3 of us were invited to speak about how yoga therapy and yoga just in general is helping individuals heal in their everyday life. And so Jackie gave a wonderful talk connecting yoga and food and how the different ways food, whether it be actual food that we eat or food as in thoughts, and food as in spiritual food that we're fed, how that feeds and nourishes our body. I spoke about how lessons that we've learned from this past pandemic and how our relationship with the earth has led to the position that we're in now, considering biodiversity and climate change. And Christine spoke about the relationship that we have with death and how yoga can support a more peaceful existence and peaceful way to approach death, and therefore a more enlivening way to live. So I welcome you to see the video. I think they did record it. But yes, that's one aspect of our education, and being scholars in this program, students are invited to speak and talk about what they're passionate about, and like what fuels their interest in the program. And so I was very proud to be called to speak. But yes, thank you, Dr. Chappell, for highlighting that. I will say this, in listening to our current students and alum speak about their experience here in the graduate program, a couple words I'm hearing come to mind. It's curiosity and community, creativity, social justice. These are some of like the key passions that really fuel our students and the program. And so we'll go back to Dr. Chappell's question for everyone about your major and kind of your educational background. And Dr. Chappell, do you want to kind of reiterate that again?
Yeah, I'll just invite Gabby to tell us where she is in the world physically, and also where you went to school and what your major was.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of the LA River, so I'm in South Pasadena. I love it here. I'm from California, so I'm just, yeah, very happy to be home because I actually went to undergraduate at another Jesuit institution, Seattle University. I did a dual degree in theater and philosophy, which is another one of those kind of funny combinations that people don't really necessarily connect. But it was extremely exciting, kind of uncharted territory of study, very like little scholarship, but I experienced the integration of those two practices just in my life and my practice as an artist. And then I came down to LA and I started, you know, performing and doing abstract kind of movement work, and specifically with classical theater, Greek theater with the chorus. And I had been practicing yoga for many years. My mother was also a yoga teacher. She also went to a Jesuit institution. So all of those kinds of Jesuit ideas, practice of yoga is very much kind of baked into me. So that's why I'm really was excited to hear that LMU had this program even, and to be a type of institution that I feel very at home in. Even though I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore in my life, I still feel very connected to that part of me. So yes, that was the degree, and I think that answers most of the question. So.
Yeah, I just want to really give a shout out for the chapel at Seattle University campus, and it has walls of beeswax, lovely rays of golden and colored light that filter through. Very famous architect called Hall. So I'm sure that you, despite your disclaimer, I'm sure you loved the chapel.
Oh, it was, and it has the smell as well. I actually, without revealing too much, we had a fellow student in my program there who passed away, unfortunately, and we had a memorial service in that chapel, and it was one of the most compelling kind of spiritual experiences I've had, being able to grieve in that space. It's very special. Yeah, that university is a great school. I do miss it, but the chapel is gorgeous. And a great theater program, beautiful theater as well.
So Sister Hoa, tell us where you are in the world and what your educational background has been.
I come from Vietnam, but now I study in Connecticut at Holy Apostle College and Seminary. I study philosophy and theology. Yeah, it is the last year of bachelor degree.
Very good, very good. I have two undergraduate students right now who are of Vietnamese origin, their families. And ironically, or just coincidentally, one's father is Chinese Vietnamese, mother Mexican, and the other's father is Mexican and her mother is Chinese Vietnamese. And in both instances, they had escaped on boats in that difficult period of Vietnamese history. But as you become part of the LMU community, you'll see, at least throughout California, we have lots of different stories and a bit more diversity of peoples than generally one sees in Connecticut. And Connecticut is a beautiful state as well. I have dear friends in Connecticut as well. So, Sister Yi Hong, are you the same story and still at the college there?
Yeah, we are study the same major, theology and philosophy.
Very good, very good. And just, I'll introduce myself a little bit more extensively later, but I did my PhD at Fordham University in theology and wrote my dissertation with a philosophy professor. So we hold many things in common. So Carla Ray, are you able to let yourself be heard?
Yes. Hello.
Very good. So tell us where you went to college and what you majored in and things like that.
So I went to undergraduate school at University of Illinois in Chicago, and I majored in applied psychology with a focus on developmental disabilities. And then I went to occupational therapy school at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, which is actually where I am right now. I had previously I lived in Colorado for about the last 28 years. So I just moved back to Richmond. In fact, after I did my yoga teacher training, and I was interested in, being in it, like returning to this community, and there was some non-profit yoga programs that were in this area that I was very interested in. And so
Excellent. That's great.
Sorry, did you all?
And I have great admiration for your field of occupational therapy. It's so fascinating, all the different ways in which people become of service in OT, so many applications.
Yes, definitely. And I have, I've done the additional certification and training, as I mentioned earlier, in cranial sacral therapy as well. So really, it's a nice adjunct, I guess, or supplement to the OT work as well. It's just really looking at the human nervous system, right? And then, on that individual level, but then how we're connecting into each other and being able to use our bodies, which I maintain in my work, we use a lot of tech devices with children, and I maintain that there's no more sophisticated device than the human body and the technology that, we have the ability to really manifest through movement and that connection with the nervous system, in our internal, as well as the connections that we're making, externally in community. So
yeah, and the connections in with yoga are amazing as well.
Yes, for sure. I mean, it's definitely I spend a lot of time working with children and families, and just I feel like the application on a larger scale in communities of the OT work that I do, but with that, pulling in, the more ancient system of yoga, and really, how are we moving through our environment and relating to the environment, and again, being of service to each other in those relationships, and that it's, it just has such a further reaching in my, to me, it's a global, you're really looking at global, and how are we educating children to use their bodies, and how they are in relationship to the environment and other people, and spiritually, and all that on all levels. So
oh, that's so great. So great. So Jamie, if you're able, if you could just type in where you are and where you went to college and what was your major or majors. And Melody, thank you for saying what you're up to. I was going to ask, who's the iPhone? And now we know. And I want to welcome Lori Fazio, who has just joined, esteemed member of our faculty. Okay, so Jamie's in Long Beach, and she went to UCLA for literature. I also was a double major in comparative literature and religious studies, not at Long Beach, but at Stony Brook University. And Jamie's in a 500-hour yoga training and very interested in yoga therapy and making it accessible to others. And I think that sounds great. And it's interesting because whenever I hear Long Beach, I think, so close and yet so far. And we have a student who in Long Beach, and sadly her car has been in the shop, and she takes the blue line to the green line to the bus, and nonetheless she makes it in less time than it took me to get to graduate school. So I was in Amityville, New York. I had an hour train ride to Penn Station, and then I had an hour, almost an hour, to get up to the Bronx on the D train. And with Emily, I say, and I did all my reading on the train, because it was really quiet time. And I had a funny thing happen. I had not been on that train for at least 30 years, and the morning train into Manhattan, and somehow I ended up on that same train. And there was this guy who had used to ride the train with me back when I was in my early 20s, and he had probably some accountancy job. And there he was, and he was riding the same train in his 50s. And I thought, oh my goodness, time stands still, time changes, but we both looked like those years had gone by. But I thought, oh, I'm so glad that I was able to move and shift over. Ayana also has lived both in New York and California, and we're sort of agreed that we actually like California. And New York is great too. I was just there. So before we start the formal introductions of first Lori and myself and the overview of the program, I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions. Yeah, Gabby.
Yeah, I just, kind of similar to what I was speaking about having been in Jesuit institutions, I just wanted to hear a little bit about having the Jesuit perspective and that being what houses the institution. How does that influence or put a lens upon how the yoga studies is taught in general terms, not necessarily specific classes? Just how does that kind of, because there's so many entrance points to the practice even. So I just am curious about what this kind of entry point is like.
That's such a great question. And I'm going to answer it by calling out a name, Father Kuhlman. And back in 1932, he prepared a book called Patanjala Yoga. And he had to wait over 30 years for approval from Rome to publish this book. And what happened in that interim period was a moment in Roman Catholic Church history called Vatican II. And Vatican II pronounced to the world in a document called Nostra Aetate that there is truth to be discerned, there is goodness to be found in all religions. And with elegant detail talks about the very important relationship between Judaism and Christianity, talks about the devotion to God in Islam, talks about the philosophy of Buddhism as discerning the ephemeral nature of life, and talks about the feeling of connectedness that arises through Hindu faiths, and the document goes on and on. And because of that document, nuns and priests all over the world began reading. And, St. Augustine heard a voice that told him, take up and read. And he read St. Paul and sort of had that revelatory moment that laid the foundation for so many of the psychological and spiritual aspects of Christian faith and practice. And what one of my professors, Thomas Berry, discovered was that by learning Buddhism, by learning Hinduism, its history, its philosophy, by learning Native American traditions, that he could make good on what he had learned as a very young monk in Thomas Aquinas, that how do we know about the existence of God? We know it because of the overflowing abundance of goodness, but we also know it because of its diversity. And back in the 1960s, Jesuit and Catholic, regardless of affiliation, whether diocesan or other religious orders, including Franciscans and Vincentians and so on, began to include the study of world religions as part of their curriculum, and this has percolated down to the high school level as well. And rather than seeing this as an impediment to faith, it is seen as a way to expand one's sense of faith. Now, my own spiritual story is that I grew up in a sort of Methodist family, which is a denomination that rose out of 18th century England, reform within the Anglican or the Episcopalian Church that sought to provide service to people of more of the working class. And what I've happened into as a teenager was reading the Upanishads and reading this book called Be Here Now. And this was a moment of discovery also in my middle school and high school curriculum, where we did a lot of world cultures. For my 9th grade history class, I interviewed a Zen master called Philip Kapleau, who had recently published a book called 3 Pillars of Zen. And I so found this book interesting that I began practicing Zazen at the age of 13. And then picked up yoga asana as a complement a couple of years later. And in my freshman year of college, met a woman from Calcutta who had just dedicated, and it was 50 years ago last week, she had just dedicated a yoga center called Yoga Anand Ashram in Amityville, New York, across Long Island Sound from Connecticut, but on the South Shore. And I met her at Thanksgiving. I transferred university to simultaneously, as I mentioned, earn my degree in comparative literature and religious studies, and study Sanskrit, study Tibetan, continue my studies of Spanish a bit, and went from there, inspired by professors who had studied at Fordham University, to do my MA and my PhD at Fordham, where our program really focused on the psychology of religion, the history of religions, and the study of Sanskrit. My Sanskrit professor was from Goa, and the dissertation advisor that took me on was from Kerala, both sort of the west coast of India. My yoga teacher was from the east coast of India. And that was a grand adventure. And what it did was to provide the skills that I needed as a professor in order to have something meaningful to say to our students. And above all else, the Jesuit universities require every undergraduate, whether they're an engineering major or a theater major or a business major, every single undergraduate student does a mini minor in religion and philosophy. They have to do at least 2 theology courses, at least 2 philosophy courses, an interdisciplinary seminar that often will be taught by someone from one of those departments. And this is a gift to those students because we as the faculty are very concerned with their human development, with what we call cura personalis. And what the yoga side, which I have been at the university since 1985, so probably before pretty much all of you were born. And my job explicitly, was to teach all of these different religions. So yes, I want to thank Jackie and Bryce and Francesca. And I guess that Lane already went away, but thank you all for being here. And I know you got lots of, at least Jackie has homework to do, and Bryce is
there's plenty of homework and reading to do.
Yeah, and he's in his workspace, so I know he's got to do all that, and Francesca's got a studio to run. So thank you, Ayana, for that interruption, and we'll see you on campus, see you on camera, and I'll
Bye,
be up and
everyone.
I'll be giving a workshop at Ojai at Crotona in February, Francesca. So I hope you'll come over and let some of your Ojai friends know about it.
When in February? Because I'll be in India.
Oh, good for you. I'll send you the details.
Okay, or I can look it up, no problem. Okay.
Yeah, they're announcing it soon. Okay, great, thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, so I've been introducing myself, and what I'll do is give a brief introduction, overview of the program, and talk about what you can expect, and then I'll introduce Zoe and Lori to talk about their pieces of the curriculum respectively. So we begin in August with an intense couple of weeks, and we may alter it just a little bit. We're still having conversations about the exact timing of it for the incoming students. But in this Foundations of Yoga Studies course, you get introduced to the university, you get introduced to a really comprehensive overview, a recently published book by Professor Stuart Sarbacher at Oregon State University called Tracing the Path of Yoga provides that history and culture and geography and diversity of the paths within yoga and the ways in which Buddhism contributes and Jainism contributes. That's a course that also includes coaching on how to use the library in the 21st century, and so much resource is now available online, and we train you how to do that and also how to write papers. Then in the same semester, you would be studying throughout the fall with Dr. Fazio and Dr. Slatoff, and they will explain their course of study in a minute. And then in the spring semester, depending upon if you're a remote learner or if you're an on-site learner, you'll take either 2 or 3 courses. We have some flexibility with that. Some of the remote learners really want to take 3, and we say, okay. And some of the local people really want to slow it down, and we say, okay to that. But the 3 are Hatha Yoga texts, which is a text that is sort of a crossover text between philosophy, physicality, and the health aspects, as well as a lot of Sanskrit terminology. We have a second semester of Sanskrit that includes verses from the Bhagavad Gita as part of the learning experience. And then there's a comprehensive overview of Indian philosophy. We call it Yoga Philosophy Text and Practice, but we work on the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Sankhya-Karika, the Yoga Sutra, and texts of Vedanta, including the Yoga Vasishta. Then first summer session, it changes. You have a 6-week period where you have class 2 days a week. instead of normally one, but a long class period. And that is devoted to the study of Buddhism. And then second summer session, so the first summer session is May, June, and the second summer session is the last week of June, July, and the first week of August. And in that course, you study Jain faith and practice. And Jainism, everyone's heard of Buddhism, not so much Jainism, and it can be pronounced either Jainism or Jainism, but it's a faith older than the Buddhist tradition that emphasizes nonviolence at its core. And then in the fall, you would by that time figure out, do I really want to do yoga therapy, or am I going to, continue with the philosophy and as my focus, or am I going to finish the whole thing and then stay on and do the yoga therapy? So it's not an either or, but it's sort of mix and match, but you would go through a process of discernment, and you would take 2 yoga therapy classes plus either comparative mysticism or the history of modern yoga if you're on the yoga therapy track. But if you're on the philosophy Sanskrit track, you would do Sanskrit of the Yoga Sutra, and you would also do comparative mysticism and the history of modern yoga. And then your final semester, if you're on the 2-year program, you would write your MA thesis. And I was director of the MA thesis class last year. Zoe will be the director of the MA thesis this coming year. So you have lots of opportunities to work with different faculty. And in addition to the 3 faces that you see on screen, and I've taught all the classes except for yoga and the health science class. But what I want to do is, in absentia, talk about other faculty members who contribute to the program. And these faculty members include Dermot Brecknock, who did his PhD in Buddhism at UCLA. We also have Eric Haruki Swanson, who is currently teaching comparative mysticism. He did his PhD at Harvard. We also have Niranjan Khalsa. These are all full-time, Eric, Niranjan, and Abhishek, full-time faculty. Niranjan Khalsa did her PhD on the Sikh musical tradition at the University of Michigan, and she's taught various of our courses and served as acting director of the program when I was on sabbatical. And we also have the Bhagwan Malinath visiting assistant professor this year, Abhishek Jain, who did his PhD in Poland and holds 2 master's degrees in Sanskrit literature. So let me introduce, in order of when they arrived into the program, Dr. Lori Fazio, who holds a doctorate in physical therapy from the Health Science Alliance in Boston that is part of Massachusetts General, which is a hospital affiliated with Harvard Medical School. She also did an advanced kinesiology degree in Australia, a pioneer in that field. She has been a practitioner of yoga for many decades in numerous lineages, including the Himalayan lineage that has successors to Swami Rama that include Pandit Tigune, as well as Swami Vedabharati. And anyway, so she'll talk about her work and her life a bit. And I also want to introduce Zoe Slatoff, who was originally at Cooper Union in New York City studying engineering, did a little bit of a side journey to India and came back and switched universities, from Cooper Union to Columbia University, where she did a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in South Asian studies with a focus in Sanskrit. For 12 years, she ran a Ashtanga yoga community, I should say, convened an Ashtanga yoga community in Manhattan, in New York City, and then just recently defended her dissertation at Lancaster University in the UK. So I'm going to let each of them in turn talk about their work, and then we'll all be open for any questions that you may have. So Lori first.
Thank you, Dr. Chappell. Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see your faces here and to meet you. So as Dr. Chappell said, I've actually been a physical therapist for over 35 years, and I originally studied at Boston University. And then in my practice in physical therapy, my personal yoga practice, which was for me a spiritual practice, I started to recognize that a lot of the practices I was learning in yoga could really help my patients that I was working with in physical therapy. So I started to seek blending these together and have been integrating yoga into my clinical practice since over probably about 25 years now. And my interest is in studying the health benefits of yoga and really getting it out to people who are suffering. As I'm sure you all know somebody at some place, some point in time, if not yourself, where yoga really helped you, be it from a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual sort of suffering. So in the program here, I actually started teaching in our certificate program. Ayana, did you already talk about the certificates? Did they So
no, I haven't gone over that.
So in addition to the MA curriculum, everybody takes an elective, and the electives are selected from these certificate programs that are essentially in our adult education department. And so one of those is yoga therapy. And there's an organization called the International Association of Yoga Therapists. And that's an association that certifies yoga therapists. It's not a licensed profession as of now. And so they also accredit schools. And so this program is the MA, and this program and the certificate are accredited programs for students to become certified IAYT yoga therapists. So I started teaching in that program in 2008, and then came on board with the MA the year after it started. So this was in 2014. And so the courses that I teach, I'll give you a little background on those. In the fall, as Dr. Chappell said, it's Health Science and Yoga 1. So in this course, we look at an understanding of the body from both the yogic body, which would be the subtle body, as well as the elements, and then also from the modern medical perspective of all the systems of the body, the cardiovascular, the respiratory, the endocrine. And then we look at these kind of looking at these two different perspectives and how yoga practices can affect us from both of these perspectives. So in that class, I recognize that some of you may come in with lots of background in anatomy and physiology, and others of you, this may be completely brand new. You're in a humanities, didn't really have anything, maybe a little flavor in your 200 hour. So this course is structured so that there's asynchronous learning ahead of time that you do. And so if you have an extensive background, you don't need to spend as much time. And if you don't, you have all the resources you need so that when we come to class, you can go from there. And then I'll just discuss the other yoga therapy courses, the health science courses. So then those of you who are pursuing the yoga therapy, or as I like to call it, the health science track, is there are 3 other courses. And so you can do this in addition to all the MA courses, or you can choose to concentrate and you substitute out 2 of the classes. So these 3 courses, one of them is Health Science and Yoga 2, and the other is Yoga Therapy Applications, and then Practicum. So in Health Science and Yoga 2, what we're looking at is to gain an understanding of the effects that practices have on our physical body, our psychological realm, our mental, our emotional, our spiritual, And in doing this, we do this through the placeholder of a group, a project that you're creating for a group. So for example, Ayana created a program that was for improving maternal health in Black birthing people, because the mortality rate in Black pregnancy is astronomically high. And so one of the factors is high blood pressure, and one of the sources of that is stress. And so we know that yoga can help reduce stress. So Ayana created an evidence-based program for this, and we look at the evidence from the modern perspective as well as the classical yoga. So everybody chooses a population that they'd like to work with and creates a program that you could then take out into the world to implement. So you're writing it, you're learning how to write evidence-informed clinical writing, which is different from the humanities. So you're learning these different skill sets in the program of writing a humanities paper and also writing a clinical paper, or a clinical writing for evidence-based writing. And so a couple people have taken it out into the world, and one graduate from, I think it was last year, she was a graduate, yeah, from last year, she took her project and she took her presentation and she took it to university, because her project was for university students for improving their mental health. And they took it on the spot. They said, we want to do this, let's implement it, is, you know, in the next coming semester. So that was really exciting. And then some people take their projects and use that in the practicum course, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And some expand them into their thesis. So that, and then also with those projects, there's a kind of a side thing, which is we'll be launching our first issue, I believe, in March. We started a journal called the Journal of Applied Yoga Studies. And this is a combination of the humanities and the clinical, looking at really what's the theory and what's the reasoning behind yoga that's put out into the world to help people, be it in environmental sciences, social justice, education, healthcare. Most of these papers that people write, they tell you what they did, maybe, but they don't really tell you why they did what they did. And so we're asking authors to really give us the reasoning behind the program, perhaps the yoga practices that you chose for a specific group. And so I really encourage the people who write these health science projects to then submit projects for publication in the J's journal. So we're hoping to give our students an opportunity to publish and get their work out there. And then the applications course is very different. The applications course is skills-based. So we learn skills such as how to assess somebody's autonomic nervous system through the breath, or how to assess musculoskeletal through asana. A skill called motivational interviewing, because we look at yoga as a lifestyle, and many of us, I don't know, I could raise my hand, how many of you have a habit that you know doesn't serve your well-being, but you do it anyway, right? So maybe you spend too much time on social media, or maybe you know, don't get up at the time you'd like to do your yoga practice, whatever it is. We know what we need to do. We know we shouldn't eat sugar, but understanding the science behind why we don't change and how we can help people through a yoga philosophy understand their habits, which we would call our samskaras, and how we apply yoga philosophy to help us change. So we learn these types of skills in that class. It's a very practical class. And then in the practicum, you have two options. One is you can implement your project and do a little mini pilot study with it, or case studies. The outcome of that project is learning how to write a case report for publication. So you will get that skill. And so you might work with an individual, individuals in your group, or you can start working with clients one-on-one, and then we meet and have private mentoring through that. So it's applying your skills, be it in individuals or in groups. And then both Zoe and I have been teaching. There's a course that I've been doing since I think 2014. It's an undergraduate course. It's a 1-credit course called Intro to Yoga that gets filled up every semester with 3 sections. It's always filled up right away with a waiting list, students begging to get in. And this course, we kind of co-created this several years ago that was similar to what this Health Science 2 is a course to provide the undergraduates with yoga practices that will help support them managing the stressors of university life. So the physical postures are about their posture that's like this all day by the computer. So we have postures to help them counter that. We also we teach them dharma. So we teach them the yamas and the niyamas, how it applies in their daily life. So using the ethics of yoga. And then they also have pranayama and meditation that's applicable for them. And they write journals and such. So you all, at least, well, for now it's the in-person students, and we're working on getting an online course as well, can teach that, can become a teaching assistant and teach that class with one of our mentorships in that. So you get that experience teaching in academia, learn all the behind the scenes that goes on, and kind of get that experience in case you want to go in that realm. So that's one other thing I'd say. My big interest, because I've worked for years in chronic pain, is I'm really interested in the subtle body. So in science, we can't measure that. And yet I think we've all had an experience of recognizing what the subtle body is. So some of the work that I've done is looking at subtle body through the concept of body awareness, which we look at in medicine and visualization and things such as this. So it's a big interest of mine. And I'm going to hand it over to Zoe. So I hope to meet you all. And if you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat. If you have any questions about the yoga therapy, you can just email me. We can get on a call.
Okay, before Zoe starts, I forgot someone. I apologize. She's not here, but Tracy T. Meyer has been teaching for our program. She is the professor generally for the Foundations of Yoga Studies course. She did her PhD at Boston College on Undal, who is a Tamil poet saint woman, and she teaches peace and justice courses and supervises the peace and justice, directs the peace and justice minor at LMU, and takes a feminist perspective and is really a wonderful ray of light for all of our students.
I forgot one more thing also. And I know that we're working on changing this, but I've taken a group of students for well, COVID put a hold on it, but we took 2 groups to India for a yoga therapy trip. So wherein we go to Kaivalya Dham, which is in Loyola. It was the first yoga therapy research center in the world, started by Swami Kubalyananda in 1920. And trying to look at the practices of yoga, particularly pranayama and some meditation practices, through the scientific lens of modern medicine to try to understand these effects, such as Dr. Chappell referred to Swami Rama and Swami Veda with one of his disciples, who was one of my teachers, as I sat in front of him and watched him stop his heart and then start his heart. And he said after doing so, I think he stopped it for about 3 minutes. He said, I didn't actually stop my heart. What I did is slow it down so that they can't pick up, they perceive it to have been stopped. And I don't do this as a party trick. I do this to demonstrate that we actually have control over our autonomic nervous system. So we go there and we see their research center. They also have a Sanskrit library of many, many, many Sanskrit texts, many of which have not been translated yet. So we spend time there with many of their teachers in our own private classes. One of whom, I don't know if you mentioned this yet, but one of the teachers that we've studied there, one of my favorite, is Dr. Ganesh Rao, and he will be with us November 1st and 2nd. So on November 2nd, you are all invited we have free Wednesday night lectures. It will be online and in person. And Dr. Rao will be with us speaking about the concept of the mind in Sankhya philosophy. So I really hope that you had time to get a little flavor of what that's like to be with him. And then we also go to Pondicherry, India, down on the southeast of India, an old French, it was colonized by the French. And Dr. Ananda Bhavanani, who is in the Gitananda yoga lineage, which I have also certified and studied in, and I've been studying with him for I think 11 or 12 years now. And they have at the Mahatma Gandhi Medical Center, they have the Sri Balaji Vidyapith University, which is a medical school, a nursing school, physical therapy school, and this hospital. Every patient who comes to the hospital has the opportunity to have yoga therapy. And so we visit the hospital and we see how they're using yoga therapy. They have for even, believe it or not, dermatology is where they started. There's a transgender program that they work in. There's seniors, special children, neurology, all the different departments, the OBGYN department. So we spend days there learning from Dr. Dr. Bhavanani in the Gita tradition. And so now we are working on blending these trips, but that usually happens in December. So if you're in the program, we will stay tuned to hear about that. So over to you, Zoe.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you and see you here. So as Dr. Chappell said, I'm the Sanskrit professor. I'm relatively new to LMU, but I have been practicing and teaching yoga and Sanskrit for over 20 years. And I think what I love about this program is that we really bring together the practice and the philosophy. And I think that happens in every class, you know, sort of where everybody is a scholar practitioner. And I think that's a really special aspect to this program. And for me, it really always has been about sort of building these bridges between, you know, between scholarship and between practitioners and the academic world and, you know, sort of other people out there. And it's one of the exciting things for me. And I teach Sanskrit starting in that time when we get together in August in person, the sort of intensive week or two. And we start learning the alphabet together and have a sort of intensive in-person dialogue. And so then when some people go off and some people will stay in person, we continue together. And a lot of our students just came back for Yoga Day, which was so exciting because I haven't seen a lot of them since last summer, except twice a week on my screen. But we've all become very close during that time. So it's wonderful to see people back. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about this program too, is it really, you know, people become very close and connected through their study and practice. So we start off in the intensive in the summer, and then in the fall we do sort of first semester of Sanskrit, and we go at a typical, you know, pretty fast academic pace. So it is rigorous and it does require a fair bit of work, but it's also a lot of fun. And, you know, my method is to get you reading real texts from the beginning. And so, you know, within a month, you are reading yoga texts, and we're doing this, you know, I am holding your hand and giving you training wheels. But right from the beginning, you are reading the texts that you want to read. And I think it's really important for anybody who wants to study and teach yoga to have some relationship, at least, to these texts, and to sort of understand that, you know, when you're reading a translation, it's somebody's interpretation. And so to be able to engage with, to a certain extent, with the texts yourself. So in the fall, we sort of have a pretty intensive introduction to Sanskrit, and we continue in the spring reading more verses from the Bhagavad Gita, from the Hatha Pradipika, and other texts. And by the end of a year, students are pretty well equipped to read texts, you know, on their own with a bit of help. And then in the second year, if you continue with Sanskrit, which of course I hope that you will, and I hope we find a way for students to be able to do both. We are now reading Upanishads and sort of diving deeper into texts. And I'm also, this year teaching the thesis course. And I'm excited for students who want to work on texts and translations, and also happy to work with others as well. But I think it's, you know, it's really amazing after just a year and a half of study to be able to get to that point of working on texts yourself. So, and yeah, I wrote a Sanskrit textbook that's specifically for yoga students. And this has been and is the perfect environment for me to be teaching from it and introducing texts. And a lot of people come in some people come in being really excited about Sanskrit, some people come in being really scared of Sanskrit. And either way, you know, I am here to do it with you and to support you in that. I think that's it, and I'm here if you have questions.
Back to you, Ayana.
Thank you all faculty for sharing in depth about your classes and what some of the students can expect. Dr. Fazio, I will say one of our current students that are here, or prospective students, Carla Ray, if you want to kind of give a little brief of your background again, she does work in occupational therapy. Am I saying that correctly? And is looking to work with students. She currently works with students, but thinking about how yoga can support their learning in that space. Am I kind of gathering that correctly, Carla Ray?
Yes, you've got that.
So for occupational therapy students?
I'm really looking, I mean, yes, I work in special education, so I work with students who receive occupational therapy services, but I am really interested in moving it into all classrooms, like primary education.
But not for the occupational therapy students, but for people who are receiving occupational therapy. Is that what you're saying, or more in just general?
Both. I mean, currently, right now, I'm actually sort of incorporating it. I incorporate yoga into the work that I'm doing directly with kids in occupational therapy, but also going into general education classrooms and starting to have teachers look at sort of how our rooms organized and the students moving through that and more motor learning aspects and incorporating yoga into those things, as well as providing strategies for them in their classrooms that they're doing just with their general education population as well.
Great. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Well, two things. Before that one, well, actually that one first. I see OT and yoga as such an amazing blend, because so much of what we talk about in yoga is a lifestyle. It's not just something that we do on a mat, for an hour a day and then that's our yoga, goodbye. It's really how we live our lives, which is so much of what you're doing in OT is really helping people with strategies in life, as well as, on the mat. So, yes, so there are a few people who have been working on programs that both within our course, within our programs, as well as in the community, on bringing yoga into primary education. I'd be happy to chat with you anytime in more detail about this. So if you were going to do like this health science too, you would then bring in your background as OT to bring that together, which many times opens up doors when you have a dual profession. But this other piece that just plant a seed is that Dr. Chappell and I have been working on with the School of Education on an EDD that has a wellness specialty that would fit exactly into what you're kind of talking about. The EDD really trains leaders in education. And the courses that we were talking about in the yoga therapy would be 3 courses within that, helping somebody work towards that EDD, really bringing yoga in as a wellness component of education, recognizing that in order to learn, there are many benefits that yoga can help because of the barriers to learning. For example, trauma in children, which so many children have, what's called adverse childhood events, ACE. So we know that adverse childhood events impede learning, and then they get diagnosed as ADHD, and then they just have difficulty moving forward in education. And so there's quite a bit of evidence that yoga practices can help support people who have, or help children in these particular situations. And so it's really getting people into the schools who really understand this beautiful marriage, so to speak. So it sounds like you could be one of those great leaders.
Oh, that sounds amazing. That's actually something I've looked at, is like, how can you combine like educational leadership and yoga into the educational system, right? Because to me, I feel like I was sort of touching on this earlier of, you walk into a classroom and the classroom has its own nervous system, right? Like the children are co-regulated off of each other, off of the teachers, off of, so does the building, and sort of how are we impacting that so that the room, the nervous system of the room basically is staying regulated to, optimize learning as, how we're moving through that classroom and how we're learning in those ways. And
I love that. I already see the title, like regulating the classroom or something, like the nervous system of the classroom. I can already that's such a great frame to put this into. It's so true. I love that.
Yeah, and I feel like, I look at it too, again, because working in special education, I feel like it's so important in the general education classroom, because I feel like this is a place where we've sort of separated out, where I feel like, well, all children have nervous systems. We all do, right? And so it's that's a sort of the ultimate leveling of the playing field in an educational setting, right? Is that if you're kind of working at that level and then out, you create more opportunities for everyone to be learning in this, manner and interacting and relating with each other in that same way. So.
Yeah, I love it. One of our students this year, Jackie, who was just here, her program is on I'm sorry, it's not Jackie, it was Heather, another student who's not here. She's doing yoga for the neurodiversity, and including and is intentionally having it be for not just, and she's actually even including Down syndrome on that neurodiverse spectrum, but within a not a special education platform, but an open classroom for all general education. Sorry. So yeah, in that, very intentionally in that way. And then somebody else is bringing trauma informed yoga into elementary school. So many different ways in these kind of subsets, bringing yoga in. And then there's what I'm hearing you say, which is actually have it embedded within the school itself, not a program that you necessarily bring in, but actually have it as part of the educational pedagogy, is bringing wellness in through yoga.
Yeah, that's been my vision for sure. Like then that bigger scale, right?
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm noticing that Amitsa Mascati has joined us, and I wanted to invite that person to say hello if you're able.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, what we would love to hear from you is, where are you, and what brought you to our session, and also where did you go to college and what did you major in?
Certainly, I'm really grateful, and thanks. You got my name, you said it, you pronounced it well. I appreciate that. My name is Amitsa Mascati. I am currently on the 101 South, driving in the Bay Area. So if you just saw me on camera, I would just be driving. So, I'm listening in, and I'm on my way to play rehearsal because I'm a performing artist currently, but I've also been an educator for the last 15 years. This really moved me to hear all of this, because the first time I think I knew about yoga, I would see my dad do some headstands growing up. He is of South Asian descent, and I kind of wondered what was some of his motivation or inspiration there. But it wasn't until I was about 20 or 21 years old in my undergraduate life at Rutgers University in New Jersey that, I was looking for a way and a path and an avenue to quell and to navigate through stress. So yoga was definitely something that I loved exploring. That was about 15 years ago. And I'm curious, I got curious about this because I have a master's from LMU when I did Teach for America. My master's at LMU is from 2011 in urban education with a focus in language and culture when I was teaching in Compton those 4 years. I've been curious about returning via the doctoral program, but I couldn't help but pop into yoga studies because I have been practicing yoga on and off, now more on with a daily practice than off, but over the last 15 years, through Florida and LA and the Bay. And ultimately, there are some social change organizations that I've worked with to train it for the first 200 hours training. And I bring wellness workshops and SEL, connected to social emotional learning, to the private school I work at right now, TK through 8. So I was just really curious if for someone like me, you know, that's been, as a practitioner currently, and sorry, I came in a bit later, but what it could look like to delve deeper. And I'm hearing a wonderful thing. I hear there's another educator that's already implementing things too. So that's my background. I just came out of curiosity because I don't, you know, I have some trainings and certifications, but perhaps not an official degree that says yoga studies. So just came to hear what you were offering.
That's wonderful. And in some ways, welcome home. You're back at LMU right now, even though you're on the freeway, far away. Yeah.
Yeah. I was certainly curious, what, maybe there's like I don't know if I missed a slideshow or anything, but just in terms of, it sounds like are there any online course or aspects to that? I know, of course, practicing yoga, especially asana, can get very hands-on in person, but I might have missed if there's a hybrid component, or if this is all basically in person on campus.
Yeah, the way that we define it is that we invite everybody to campus for a period, you know, 10 days or a couple of weeks in August to get to know each other and to refresh in terms of library and paper writing skills and do an overview of yoga. And we do some amazing field trips, both in LA and up in Ojai. And then from that point forward, you're really given the option to learn remotely. And for what people are able to do is, like we're doing now, is we create learning experiences online, even for the yoga and the health science, even for the Sanskrit class. And we've been doing this. We have, since the program began almost, 10 years ago, it will be, and we've been live, simultaneously broadcasting, as well as video archiving every single class session. And that has worked. We've graduated many people who have been essentially remote learners.
Awesome. And that was over the course of how long typically, for given all the courses?
Yeah, usually 3 years, 2 to 3 years.
Awesome. Thank you for that information and to catching me up to speed here.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Thank you all for joining us today. We have about 15 minutes left, so I want to open it up to questions. If there are questions that anyone specifically has for our faculty